Good to see you. Good to see you guys. Man, I just, that last song just ripped me apart and tore me up a little bit. So I'm a little verklempt here, I think is the right word. But I'm excited to be with you guys today, and we have a special conversation for you. We've done something called Convos with cool folks periodically throughout daylight. And this Sunday, I had a good friend come in from out of town, and my buddy Scott Pitt, who you'll be introduced to in just a moment, and he and I have been friends for 20 years or what more than that probably at this point. But we've braved the roundabouts of Scotland, driving on the left-hand side of the road, right side of the car, left side gear shift, left side clutch pedal. I mean, we've vomited in the seas of Puerto Rico together from little seasickness while deep sea scuba diving, and we've just had all kinds of adventures together. And I'm excited to introduce him today. Scott, would you come on up? Scott, like I said, has been, I would say, one of the most important relationships of my entire life. And I'm going to give him an opportunity to introduce himself in just a second. But I first want to share, as you can tell, they're bright. Yeah, they're bright. You can ditch the mask, bro. We've been hugging all weekend. It's not going to stop anything at this point. So my favorite memory of Scott is probably, I had just had knee surgery. And my ACL was blown out, and I had multiple meniscus tears, and had reconstructive surgery on my knee. And so I was immobilized like this. I think it was my left knee. I've done both, so I could have been. It was one of my knees. I don't remember which one. And I was immobilized in a leg length cast, and he was driving me around. We were driving to Paducah, from Murray, Kentucky, and we were on an exit ramp when we passed this car that had been pulled over, and the guy in the driver's seat of the car was hitting the girl in the passenger seat of the car. And there was some violent altercation going on in this car, and we're going 45 miles an hour, and I said, man, that guy was hitting that girl. And he hits the brakes, and we slam on the brakes and scoot over. And he gets out of the car first, and I'm doing my best to get out of the car, and I'm grabbing my crutches from the back seat, and I'm walking towards the car while he's walking like this. And you saw what a big guy he is, right? And the dude gets out of the car, and then the girl gets out of the car, and she's harassed and phased, I guess. But Scott says, "Why are you hitting that woman?" and he got all bravado. I love telling this story, bro. I'm sorry. He got all bravado. The dude was like, "You want some of this, big boy? Come on, man. Come on. Bring it, man." And Scott's going, "Why are you hitting her?" and walking towards her. And then I think it kind of dawns on him what a big guy Scott is. Because he was an offensive lineman for Murray State University, 6'3", 480 pounds, about, something like that.
When I was on a diet.
On a diet. And he just kept walking towards the guy like this. And then the dude's eyes open. And he was like, "Get in the car. Get in the car." And he starts yelling at her, "Get in the car." And he says, "Why did you hit that woman?" And he goes, "Man, she hit me first, man. She hit me first." And then he talks her into getting into the car, and they squeal out and peel out and drive away. And we took pictures, or we memorized their license plate and called the cops on them. And that was the last we saw of him. But it has always spoken to me of his bravery. Like it took something to pull over that car and to intervene in this situation. We don't know the details of the situation or how it started. And domestic abuse does work both ways, and we don't want to discount that. But all we knew was we saw a guy hitting a girl, and Scott was willing to put himself on the line for it. And I've seen him periodically and systematically throughout his life put his life on the line for others in more non-literal ways. He's laid down his life for friends, for his family, for his church. He's been very sacrificial, and I love him dearly. I love you, man. I appreciate you being here. Introduce yourself. Tell us about yourself and who you are and what you do and your family, and just give us the 2-minute lowdown.
Been married 16 years. My lovely wife Amanda and I. We've got 4 lovely kids. There might be a fire back that way, yelling and screaming this way, but no, they're wonderful. 3 daughters, and then God bless us with a son as our 4th baby 16 months ago. So their ranges are 11, 9, 5, and 16 months. So that's a brief introduction.
And what do you do for a living?
I work in commercial construction. And we build larger buildings, don't really get as much into the residential. Actually, I wouldn't know how to wood frame a house myself. It's all the commercial side of things, and larger buildings, downtown mid-rise, sky-rise type buildings, and jails and that kind of thing. So.
You'll find that Scott is humble about 60% of the time.
Only when I'm competing against him am I not.
And like the time that we were throwing up coming out of Puerto Rico, we were scuba diving, and the swells were 12-foot swells at least, right?
Yes,
Something like that.
12.
15. And I started getting nauseated, and so I started throwing, they call it chumming for fish, because when you throw up, then the fish swarm it and gobble it up. And I'm chumming the fish, and Scott has to get it on the party. So he comes over, and he's projectile vomiting over the side of the boat. And we get off, and afterwards, we're laying on the dock. And if you've ever had seasickness, it's the worst. It's just the worst thing on earth. And we're laying on the dock, like spread eagle, staring up at the sky, beautiful sunny morning. And he leans over, he goes, "Dude, I threw up way further than you." And so he can talk some smack, but he's also a humble dude, and he's kind of downplaying his career a little bit. He was a project manager for what I understand was the largest church in Texas, at least at the time. Is that accurate or pretty close? Yeah. And the kind of guy that he gets the permits to shut down multiple square blocks of Dallas, Texas, like right smack dab in the middle of the city, so that they can build these construction walkways that go over the roads. And he's a big deal in his field, and I very much appreciate his humility. And there's no need for him to put on pretense, but he's made something of himself and sacrificed a lot. And so tell us a little bit about your faith journey. Where did you start? So when we got to know each other, it was in college. Was I already a campus pastor? I was already
I believe so.
an associate minister at a campus ministry.
Right, I believe so.
And you came as a junior college transfer as a Murray State football player.
Yeah. I transferred from a small town in Kansas, where I played football 2 seasons, and I did a mid-year transfer in January to Murray State. Wasn't serving the Lord at the time. I had kind of backslidden into kind of lots of drinking, partying, freshman, sophomore year of college. Got to Murray, and I was walking along the campus, headed, and this is kind of, I think, January or February. I heard somebody from one side of the campus, this big outdoor court square area, kind of Christ Ambassadors or Chi Alpha, and just kind of launched it across the whole thing, and talking to the guy that I was walking with out of class. And I asked that dude what that was, and they said, "Oh, it's a campus ministry," and that guy never ever came again, but he went that night. I think I went that night, and I think I met HL and probably Paul and Becky that evening. So
we eventually became housemates and shared the worst house on the planet. We were just talking about it last night. Like we had roommates. We had one guy that, like, at one point he brought in a dog off the streets and put it in his bedroom, and then left it for 3 days and went out of town. Like, we were bringing in people that had like issues, and it was a mess.
I think that's why I got there too.
Dude, we're looking for people with issues. Would you please? You're perfect. You're absolutely perfect. But dude, we had one guy that would slash the couch with a knife just because he was feeling fun, and he stole my bike and rode off on it. And I saw him ride my bike. I said, "Dude, were you riding my bike?" He said, "No, man, I wasn't riding your bike." I said, "But I saw you. I saw you out in front of our house riding my bike." "I didn't ride your bike." Those are the kind of people that we lived with, and we did. I was thinking about this in the shower this morning and started like gut laughing. We did poetry night between us and a couple of our roommates.
This was unscripted, and now I know why.
Yeah, these Convos with cool folks are completely unscripted, and we hope at some point the Holy Spirit shows up and does something neat. But right now it's just, it is what it is. And but you got involved with campus ministry, and I'd say committed your life to Jesus during that time, and went off to the marketplace. Tell us about that journey. Like what was that time period like?
I gave my life to the Lord right around the time I was just describing, and stayed that way and served the Lord for a very long time. Got into the marketplace, graduated and went straight into kind of entry-level position in commercial construction with a company out of Memphis named Flintco. And they moved me over to, at the time, with the largest project that they had. It was a $90 million federal medium security prison, which are pretty nice, actually. And the rest is kind of history. And when I graduated, I told the guy that interviewed me, he said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I just want to travel, so just send me anywhere you want me to go." And he said, "You're hired." So that was easier than I thought, and all the prep that they give you on interviewing, and that's all I had to say. And so they did, and I moved around quite a bit. I went to Arkansas, middle of nowhere, little brief stint in Puerto Rico for about a year, Louisiana, Texas, Oklahoma, back to Texas, and I've pretty much been in Texas since. And so that's kind of the course of that. I think that a lot of ups and downs as far as my walk with the Lord in the marketplace, and kind of being the same in your heart, in your walk with the Lord, or your closet, and you pray and read, and also being the same way when you're out doing your job. Lots of ups and downs, but I think there's the one thing that just over and over again I think I could say is a common thread, is just treating people the right way, and keeping it that simple. That's an entry place, and just, treating people the way you want to be treated. I mean, it is the golden rule for a reason. I know it's a cliche, but I think everybody that I've encountered over the years, and I'm in construction, so you're in a pretty hardened environment every single day, where arguing and yelling the highest and longest is like a jewel. But you can still treat that same person the same way, even though he just kind of yelled so hard he spit in your face. So that's a common thing that, amongst everything else, in walking with the Lord and being a believer, is just loving people.
So tell us two things, just out of curiosity: your proudest football moment and your proudest professional moment.
I guess football moment, I was unanimous team captain my sophomore year at Coffeyville. There's other things, but I think for my teammates to vote that way is a big deal for me. And I think as far as my career, I think my favorite project was the church that you were talking about. I learned so much. They just had an amazing team. None of us knew each other, and I had a staff of about 15 people, and to go from nobody knowing each other to kind of being thick as thieves through the end of the job, and building the largest church ever to be built in America at the time is a big deal. Because I think if people would show up, they'd be like, "Gosh, this is a great team," and you just think they must have been working together forever, but we didn't. And so pulling that together, coming through it, we finished 5 weeks early and gave money back to the church, was probably my happiest moment.
Yep. So I want to dive into some heavier stuff. Last week I talked about Binnenleben, the German word that kind of means the inner man and the secret person and the person that nobody ever gets to see. And for some reason, this concept of masks and confession and light and transparency is just really like heavy on me these last couple weeks, and it's just something I really want to talk about. And I'm reading a book right now about it's the autobiography of a wife whose pastor was involved in like deep, seedy, vile lifestyle that she didn't even have any clue about, and it was like just uprooted her life when she discovered it. And there's lots of, we talked last week about Ravi Zacharias and how shocking it was when the truth came out about Ravi and what he had been doing. And so I'm not sure why it's so heavy on me, but I think Scripture talks about how if we walk in the light, because God is the light, that good things happen, and that it specifically says that we have fellowship with one another. That there's something about, like people are meant to connect, but walking in darkness, or like wearing masks, which we all do. That's what. If you didn't get a chance to watch the sermon last week, watch it, and it just talks about how we all put on a front. Like none of us are absolutely transparent ever, even with our closest of friends and our spouses and whoever else we consider the closest people we know. None of us fail to put on a show sometimes, and some of that is healthy. Some of it keeps the world from being a downer all the time. Nobody wants to be that guy or that gal. But in some sense, it also keeps us from connecting, and keeping us from connecting keeps us from loving, and keeping us from loving defies our God-given potential of like who we are and what we were designed to be. And so this concept of transparency and bringing things to light has been really heavily on my mind, which is partially why I wanted to talk to Scott. Scott has been a good friend for a long time, and I transparently have spoken about how I have some things in my past that I don't talk about with anybody except my wife and my therapist. And I decided that during this series I was going to start allowing that to come out and talk with friends. And so I talked with my friends Becky and Paul last week about my history and some of the things. It was a situation of abuse that I endured, and I've always felt kind of guilty because I participated in it. And like, was it my fault? Was I culpable for what I did when I was, a teenager, or was this something that was inflicted upon me? And it's been really hard to parse all that out and parse out like what people will think if I'm open and transparent. And so I was able to share with my friend Scott and my other buddy Ryan yesterday, and these are the only people that I've ever shared details with. I think I may have in the past, and I'm just not thinking about it, but he's a guy that has shared quite openly with me about some things that he dealt with in the past, and I've been able to share openly with him. And what I've found, and this is the goal for today and the goal for this series, is that people won't despise you the way they think you think they might. People will help. If you've experienced abuse, or if you've been the abuser, if you've lived a double life, if you have sin in your life or difficulties in your life that you hide from everyone, or you just don't want to bring everybody down all the time, what you'll find is that when you share with a friend, and this doesn't mean you air your dirty laundry with every single person you ever meet, but it does mean that darkness needs to be brought out into light somewhere, somehow. It needs to come out of your soul and out of your innards, your guts, to lay it on the table and let someone see it. And it's nice that we live with a God and a Father that sees it all. And we talked last week about how we hear these passages about how every secret will be laid bare before the God who knows everything. And we read that like the sign that says, repent or perish, repent and burn. We think God, oh no, God knows my secrets. But that's not, in my opinion, how these passages were meant to be interpreted. It's, oh yes, God knows my secrets. Because we find out that this God that knows our secrets is also the God who would lay down his life for us. And that's a pretty special thing. So when you tell a friend your deepest, darkest secret, when you bring the skeletons out of the closet, and so to speak, and they say, I love you, I'm sorry that happened to you, they talk you through it, and they're still your friend the next day, there's something precious about that. And God is God exhibits that preciousness, is that you can tell him anything. He knows anyway. You can tell him anything. But there's something about bringing stuff to light. And I know, Scott, this puts you on the spot a little bit, and obviously you can be as transparent. This isn't me. This is a bunch of people, and we're actually broadcasting online, so there's no telling who's listening. But I do know this. I know that you had at least one extended period in your life, and maybe more, where you felt like who people saw on the outside and kind of your external spiritual visage wasn't what was going on in the inside and kind of in your private life. And I just want to give you carte blanche to talk about that as much or as little as you want to. Sure. And hold the mic here. Like when you do like this, then it gets real. So, yeah.
You can't hear me like that.
Yeah, no. There you go.
Absolutely. Things fester in darkness. That's where the worst of the worst takes place, and with a lifelong journey that's still imperfect. What I've learned from really starting at an early age, and I I was involved in abuse at an early age, sexual abuse. And at the time, obviously as a youngster, 7 years old, that lasted a year until my family moved, and we moved to a different house, and it's the only time it's ever happened, but it was regular. And thankfully, in the Lord, I played sports, and so it was almost an immediate stuffing and allowing. I was just an athlete, but a wall grew in that moment. That and I know all these things now as I've processed it, but a wall grew, and it's affected many relationships ever since, of how deep I can go and how much I want to have a deep friendship or marriage, or and just that hardness, and just the ability to in this conversation be transparent. And it was a 30-year stuffing, where more layers and more other things would stuff it down and not let it out. And it affected many things. It also caused some awkward relationships with my father, with my wife over the years, and it wasn't until the first freedom that I actually had as a result of it, and the first person I even ever told was my wife before we got married. And I felt there was a safe place, A, and B, I felt like this is something that needs to be known by the person I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. So I launched out and found safe ground there, and still have to this day in that regard. But it wasn't over yet. Like I said, it's a journey, and very rarely in my life is it just cold turkey on how the Lord walks us through pain. And so although there was like, oh my gosh, you mean I could share something like that and it just be safe? Which is, yes, you can, and I can, and I did. There's other steps that need to be taken, but I didn't take them. And so although that was a peak moment, there was valleys later on, because it wasn't completely dealt with in a way, in that abuse and that pain. And when I say that, I'm really talking about the ability to have, wow, that is a lot better. So hopefully you heard everything I just said, because I don't ever say it twice. So as you can see, I don't talk in mics much. So I think I hit another valley, and just roadblock in relationships, and finding another way or outlet to deal with that became alcohol, and became, because I still worked really hard for a living. I loved work. I loved going to work, and I felt like I was good at it, but I drank every day. Many times in blackout, because that allowed me to stuff that pain that was starting to come to the light, and that's not what the devil wants. And so there was another way for me to kind of stuff it back down. And I think there was a moment, and it's 2014, and there was this constant struggle, because many people saw me as just somebody that drank and liked to have a good time, and I would take my people out, and like my team and my staff, and that's kind of the way we became closer. But they didn't see the turmoil going on the inside. Like, nobody had a clue, because I'd come home as a husband and a father, and I just felt completely 100% lousy because I knew that wasn't the place that I was supposed to be. And so that was the double life. It was great that I worked hard and was providing wonderfully for my family, and the Lord was providing even amongst all of that. But it was lousy that I wasn't able to have a deep relationship with my wife the way that she would like me to. It was lousy that I would get angry at my daughters if they wouldn't go to sleep so I could start drinking. Lousy. And I felt that on the inside, but I couldn't talk to anybody about it because it's shameful. I couldn't trust many people to take that and hold it, with security. And it wasn't until, and I'm actually, can I?
Take your time.
I want to tell a story. A guy at work that at one point I partied with. He was, at the time, I was a senior project manager, and so was he. He was on a different job, and I was on mine. He gave his life to the Lord. He didn't grow up in church. I kind of did, but he didn't. And he gave his life to the Lord and just passionate for the love of Jesus on his life. And he immediately came over to me and was like, I want you to come to this little men's retreat. And I said, no, absolutely not. But he didn't stop. He kept on reaching out. And long story short, he ended up asking me, and for whatever reason, even though my heart was saying no, my mouth said yes, and he was kind of caught off guard, and I ended up going to this weekend retreat. And had a very, very impactful moment of rededicating my life. That was 2014. But leading up to that week, that was March 17th, I went out and got drunk. I came home drunk. I got in an argument with Amanda, yelling and screaming. Cussing at the top of my lungs. I left the house. She followed me. My daughters, my two older daughters were there. They heard every word. They started crying. I mean, these are the moments that I remember that in my life right then, nobody saw those outside of the family, but it was destroying my relationships and the relationships that are most important to me. And Amanda that evening took our daughters and left and stayed with her sister. At the time, Amanda was working as a bedside nurse at nights. And that Wednesday night, I was going to the conference Thursday. So it was a Monday, St. Patty's Day. Of course, I had to drink green beer all night long. So I got home. She took the kids. Wednesday, my sister-in-law had the kids because she worked. Amanda came home Thursday, and I was still home. And she said, why aren't you packing up to go to the thing? I said, I'm not going. There's absolutely zero chance I'm going to go. And I mean, this is the courage. If we want to talk about bravery, we talk about bravery. This is who I married. And she walked up to me and put her hand on my cheek and said, if there's nothing else that you ever do for me again, please go. And that moment saved our marriage, and she packed my suitcase, and I went. And it's been rocky, but it's been uphill ever since, from that moment on. And lots of dirt came out in the course in the months and years, or months really, that followed. But that was the beginning of seeing I think if I come full circle a little bit, that's the beginning of what I would say was the blessing, and the blessing that comes from acts of transparency. was seeing the safe place and the ground that you can cover with relationships in your life that you're able to be safe and transparent with.
You know, the one thing I'd never heard that part of the story before. I'm hearing it for the first time. The one thing I love about that, there's lots that I love about it, but one thing that stands out to me is that Amanda was the one person who really knew at this point. And there might have been others at that point, but the person who saw you, the person who felt you, and she still loved you. And it was the person who saw you and that you were now exposed and kind of naked in front of. That's the person who said, let's get help. Let's move forward, not back. So it took a kind of bringing things out into the open. And in this case, it was unavoidable. She was going to see it. But the person who saw it is the person who helped. And my guess is that at that retreat, people started to see a little bit. And the people who could see you were the ones who could help you walk. And you said it was a rocky road, and may still have some rocky patches. I don't know. But it was the people who saw what was going on. It was what was exposed into the light that could be dealt with. Because what was kept in darkness and kept hidden could never be exposed, could never be dealt with. And you mentioned that you mentioned it in the context of where the devil wants you. But I think it's fair to say that darkness breeds darkness. Like you have to hide to keep hiding, and then to keep hiding you have to hide more, and it compounds. Talk about that just for a second. What?
Yeah, and one other thing I want to say is I think Amanda's act was transparent, because in that moment, as she was leading up to putting her hand on my cheek and telling me, "Please go," she didn't know what I was going to say or do. And I think that's part of transparency. There's a trust to it. She was trusting this is going to go well for us, but I really don't know. I really don't know what he's going to do, because the last time I saw him, he was not in a good way, but I'm going to do it anyway because I think that it's going to be good. And I think that was an ultimate act in her ways of transparency, because she was opening herself up for a possible rebuttal from me that wasn't good, right? And I think that's a huge part of transparency is just that trust factor.
There's a risk and vulnerability.
There's a risk in the transparency, and that's why I think it's important that there's still some wisdom in it, and in a scripture that comes to my mind is in Proverbs, and it's, above all else, guard your heart diligently, for it's a wellspring of life. And I think the diligent part of it comes to play with that you're not just casting everything to everybody, but I think the Lord will bring people into your life that you can be safe with and transparent with. And for me, that at that time was Amanda for sure, obviously. So
I'm struck with the fact that shame begets shame. That a lot of times what happens is when you feel ashamed, you try to hide your shame, and then you feel ashamed that you're hiding your shame. And it's just this terrible, what they call a vicious circle, where you give in to shame, and shame is hidden. And so the way to break that cycle of shame is to break the hiddenness a lot of times. What time is it? How are we doing on time? Anybody? 10:55. Talk about, let's jump to Jesus. Let's talk about Jesus a little bit. We always like to talk about Jesus in this church. We kind of think Jesus is a big deal here. And talk about the role of Jesus in this. Well, I have this thought that when you kind of came out of the closet, when you let your skeletons be seen, when you let the darkness be invaded by light, I'm going to guess that 100% of the people that you felt you could trust, that you went to, the exposure, they didn't say, "Oh, you're a dirty, nasty, awful sinner, and I want nothing to do with you. Get away from me." That probably was not the response.
correct. No, not one person.
And so Jesus likes to work through his people. And talk about that, the reality that people who love Jesus and people who are trying to be invaded by Jesus try to help other people be invaded by Jesus. And so when the lights are shined, what is the response? What does Jesus do in those situations?
I think what I found more than anything is that people are pulling for you, and people are going to rally. I mean, there was people that I didn't really even know that once they saw a difference, they were pulling for you and became accountability partners, even though you didn't really know them and didn't really ask for them to be. It's just they were rallying, and from family members to acquaintances at work, and I mean, even at work. I mean, I got back and I said, no, I'm not gonna go out and drink with you, but I'm gonna go, but I'm not gonna drink, and I'd have water. And there wasn't even a hint of making fun or anything because they still enjoyed me. And that was such a healing thing because my identity wasn't wrapped up in the liquor, and people still loved me anyway. And I think that's the biggest thing I found is, and that comes from both people that were serving the Lord and people that weren't serving the Lord, because I think I feel like, and this is based on experience, that there's an innate desire for people to rally behind people that are trying to better themselves in life, and especially in a place where people are serving Jesus even more, I would say.
I'm struck with the thought of Ravi Zacharias and how different his story could have been, or Bill Cosby or Kevin Spacey or some of these people that now live in infamy because they got busted without ever coming out. And how different Ravi Zacharias' story could have been if even a month before he died, if he had just told someone, if he had just confessed and said, I've done these terrible things and I need to bring them to light, we would think differently about his legacy. The same with Bill Cosby at this point, or Kevin Spacey, or anybody else that we consider like scum is the word that comes to mind. Like these people who did these scummish things. There's something liberating, like how we view those people about, like we all know that we have skeletons in our closet. We all know that we wear masks. We all know that there's stuff that we hide. And we all kind of applaud the fact that we applaud when people can step out from the mask and show themselves. Like body positivity is a big thing nowadays, and when people who don't have the perfect sculpted body take pictures of their body and post them online and say, hey, I'm improving, or hey, this is me and I'm beautiful, we applaud that now. And I think Scott's story tells that, and yours and my story tells that. Probably the odds are. Now there are some scummy preachers out there. There's some dirtbag people that will hate you. The fears can be solidified sometimes. You come out and you tell the truth and you get blasted for it. But there's always going to be people who will not treat you that way. And I think part of the beauty of Scott's story and what we're trying to talk about here is find someone you trust and allow the light to shine in, and Jesus will do great things. And I said, let's talk about Jesus. Talk about Jesus for 45 seconds. What's he mean to you? I mean, let's summarize the King of the universe in like a minute or less. Go.
I think it all begins. Everything that I've mentioned begins with a relationship with Jesus, hands down. Nothing that I've shared somewhat openly could have taken place without a resolve and a friendship in Lord Jesus Christ. Because at the end of the day, if I've said something that maybe I could get made fun of, I know Jesus won't. He died for it. He loves me anyway. He loves me in those moments where I feel like something could have been my fault back when I was 7 years old. He loves me. And that's the safest place on earth in my life.